Hey everybody, Sean here. I'm doing this. It's kind of a double dose. We've got Cobb Daly and Simple Cuts in the house, and I have none other than Nat Cassidy, superstar horror author extraordinaire. When he's not busy writing incredibly scary novels and novellas, we'll get into it. He is an accomplished actor and musician and playwright, and he's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And yeah, he's just an all around good dude. So there you go.
Oh God, no pressure. Thanks a lot, Sean.
All right, I'll make you feel better. I'll ground us both.
Hmm.
I was DMing and congratulating Jonathan Jans on a phenomenal podcast episode, and it's right up your alley because it's the year of oh my
Oh
gosh,
yeah.
the year of underappreciated Stephen King
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Kim C.
She's the
And
best.
oh my God, uh, what she does with Jonathan, it made me cry. It took me through all these emotions. But I got to thinking, I was like, this fucking Jans, he is tall and
Hmm.
good looking and
Oh,
talented. I'm like, that cup runneth over.
biceps that won't quit.
Yeah. So yeah, you
Perfect
know what?
hair and
We've
so
got it in for
nice.
Jans. And so
He can't even be an asshole. It's like
and
such a. It's so rude.
I mean, it's like someone at Central Casting was like, "Get me a Jans," and a Jans walked in. So that
He's
grounds us
wonderful.
both.
Yes,
He
exactly.
is
Exactly.
such a nice guy. But hey, you're not too shabby yourself.
Oh, you're too kind.
No, all right, ready for me to not be kind? Let's go back to what I told you before I press record, and that is Nat Cassidy. Fuck you. Nat was kind enough to send me Rest Stop, his new novella, and I read it in one sitting. And I'll give you maybe TMI, but when I'm lucky enough to receive an arc from an author such as yourself, my process is I sit in bed and I read, and then it's like stages. I'm above the covers, and as I'm reading, then I get under the covers, and then I'm deeper in the mattress and deeper. And then my wife eventually comes in, and she knows at this point that I'm doing my thing, and then she'll look at me and she'll go, "We good?" Because she wants to know if I'm enjoying it or not. And she knows immediately if I just look over and I go, she knows it's bad. But if I look over and I go, "We good," and you were a definitive "we
I got
good,"
a we good.
you got to we good, and then you got to fuck you. Because I told her, I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. Nat has done two things. He has ruined one of my favorite things in the world, convenience stores, and he's ruined a good pee. So what is wrong with you? Oh, I mean that in the best way possible. It's not what is wrong with you, it's what is so right with you.
Oh, oh, you're too kind.
Tell me where the heck this idea came from.
No, this is great, and I should say right off the bat, you're the first person I'm like actually having a face to face conversation about this. So I
Oh,
have no fucking idea. Like I don't have any of my like canned answers or
oh,
my
good.
pre planned thoughts. So this is going to be chaos.
Oh, I love
Um,
it.
Not that I do canned answers, but you know you get into a swing when you start going on a little press tour. So I am just shooting from the hip here.
Awesome.
Uh, where did it come from? It came from uh, my wife grew up in eastern Pennsylvania, and we live in Queens, as we've covered prior. And that drive can be very monotonous. Anytime we go to that area of Pennsylvania to visit or something, and there's always a rest stop slash gas station that we tend to stop at in New Jersey because you know New Jersey will pump your gas for you, so it's
Yes.
luxury.
Yes.
And that rest stop, which I think is in Phillipsburg, if I am remembering correctly, has a little bathroom that's like a little appendix to the convenience store, and because we make that drive so frequently, I that just tends to be like a reliable place to stop and pee because you know they'll fill up the tank. We can go to the bathroom. We can get snacks from the convenience store,
Perfect.
and there's just something about that bathroom that Again, it's as with the Novella rest stop. It's a single use little bathroom, no stall or anything like that. You just walk into this little white tiled room, and there's a toilet and a sink, and then nothing else. Uh, and especially if you make that drive late at night, like there's this weird feeling of comfort and vulnerability at the same time, because it's a bathroom. You're using the bathroom. That's inherently
Mhm.
vulnerable, but also you feel like kind of cocooned in it. And I don't know, like there's just always uh, been at the back of my head whenever I use that place specifically or any place like it, this feeling of like, what if somebody locked me in here? Like, what would I do then? And there's also, again, so my wife is from Eastern Pennsylvania. She grew up in a tiny little town at the like lowest part of the Poconos. Um, the town she grew up in is like 2,000 people or something like
Oh, okay.
tiny
Tiny
town.
town. Okay.
Yeah. Like half of my high school class was the entirety of her town.
Oh my goodness.
And sometimes when we go out there for various reasons, um, there is what is it called? I want to remember the name of it specifically, and I can't. It's escaping my head, but it's like a tiny, like befittingly tiny to the region zoo ish.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
starting to see the pieces
it's
falling into
like
place now.
yeah. It is the Trumbull Spider and Snake Farm that is mentioned in Trumbull Farm Spider and Snake House that is mentioned in Rest Stop was very much inspired by, again, the same drive. They're far apart. Well, obviously the bathroom is in New Jersey. This is in the Poconos. But the real version was not a Spider and Snake House, but it's like one of those like private zoos that you would find on like Tiger King or something like that. Like it's run by like a private little family.
And you're always wondering, like, who had the thought to do this,
Yeah,
to bring these animals into basically
yeah.
their backyard?
And
Yeah.
it's like a bear and like a cougar and then just like a bunch of like bugs and snakes and stuff like that. And we never actually went to it until like a year or two ago after I'd written Rest Stop. But we would always drive by it and I would see the sign and be like, what the fuck goes on in that weird place? And so, yes, that element also was then added into the just kind of natural gas station bathroom fears that I think everybody has. I would imagine
Yes,
everybody has. As
I
lovely as
think
convenience
so.
stores are, their annexed bathroom tends to be wanting for good vibes. So yeah, like they just kind of combined into we, especially when my wife's mom was ailing, we would make that drive all the time, and we at one point had a storage unit out there that we would drive to a lot. So we were just making that drive all the time,
All the
and
time.
this story kind of came out of trying to make those drives a little more productive.
I love finding out how the sausage is made. I love, just such a simple thing as these drives, and that hypnotic quality, which you capture
Mm.
perfectly, by the way,
Oh, thank you.
when in the beginning. And I'm going to avoid at all costs, and I'll be able to edit them out if I step all over my tongue. Spoilers, so I'll avoid spoilers at all costs. And that is honestly a gift to the listener and the watcher right now, because you need to go into this knowing nothing at all. Because let me just say, it escalates and escalates and escalates, and then it just blossoms and escalates further. That's all I'll say. It I really did love everything about this novella. So much so that I'm like, oh, okay, that maybe we circle back to this at a later date. And that's going to be my last question to you, is it, because I have a very specific question that I want to end the interview with. But of course, what I do is I get all over my skis. So let me start. Let me
Put a
start from
pin
the
in that.
beginning. Okay. First and foremost, I love the age that Abe is at in the
Mm.
novella, because I think most people can really identify with it. When you're too young to be considered a full grown adult
Yeah.
that people take seriously, but you're too old to be a kid
Yeah.
anymore. You have, people look at you as, okay, you really need to embrace some responsibilities. And Abe is stuck, and I really identified with it. Abe is stuck in this like limbo of indecisiveness with his life. Whether it's his romantic entanglements, or the direction with his band, or even his family commitments. There's that procrastination, I should say, that he's just like, it's got to pull him out to kind of do these things if he does them at all. And then you write poor Abe into a situation where he has to, on the fly, lose all of that. I mean, literally shed it and transition into something that he is not well equipped to do. And I won't say if he rises to the occasion or not, because we're not going to spoil anything. But those moments and the transition of Abe throughout the novella, I would put the novella down on my chest, and I would just go, son of a bitch, and then I'd pick it back up again. You nailed it.
Thank you.
You nailed that moment in time. It rings so true. I think everybody who reads this is going to be able to identify with that moment in your life when you're young like that.
Yeah.
And you almost like maybe there's still claw marks on the pavement of you being dragged into adulthood, And Abe grows up pretty quickly in that bathroom. Pretty quickly. So I will say this, though. Was it for the sake of the story that, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but you let me know, snakes and spiders. Matt, snakes and spiders. Was it just because it's snakes and spiders, or was it just because, okay, for where I have him and what I'm going to put him through, this makes the most sense for the story? But you just have tapped into the primal fear of everyone on the planet.
That was the hope. Yeah, it was. So to answer your question, yes, it was both. It's a thematic choice. It serves a purpose, but also it evokes something that is like deeply hardwired in most people. Like just that revulsion of the legless or the too many legged creature. Obviously there's a ton of kind of religious symbology at play too in this story, and so the snake in particular is just kind of it takes on this sort of biblical resonance, as does the name Abraham and a few other things that get threaded throughout. So it was an intentional sort of evocation, as you've already alluded to, of this growing up, this maturation, this understanding of one's place in the natural world, in the order of things, in the chaos of existence. Is there a meaning to this? Is there not a meaning? Is there someone out there listening to this? Is this entertaining someone? Is there a cruel, overseer of all of this horror? Or is it all just kind of random chaos? These are all things that I very much wanted to sort of have be active questions in this, also very purposely oogie and upsetting. And I've already kind of alluded in other writings and stuff like that this was my attempt at like kind of writing an extreme horror. I wanted it to be extreme. I wanted it to be as capital E extreme as anything I've written yet. So pulling in snakes and spiders and the other things that happen, like that was also very consciously like, let's make this as phobic triggering as possible, because that's the experience that it is aiming for anyway. It is supposed to be like literally this dark night of the soul. So let's have some skittering.
Okay, you bring up a great point. So it is capital E extreme, and that is said with tons of love and in the best way possible.
And I feel like it's just extreme relative to my other body of work. Like there are other extreme horror writers who go way farther than I do. But for a Nat Cassidy story, this is extreme. This is my extreme one.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're getting after it. I thought it was fantastic, but you're right. I mean, it's definitely in the Nat Cassidy wheelhouse world. You know, I think a lot of people are probably going to use the S word, splatterpunk, when
Yeah,
they,
I'll
yeah,
take it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, hell, I think it's time for a resurgence if we haven't already, gotten there. But were there any influences from previous splatterpunk
Hmm.
authors, or was this just you riffing on your own take and just having a go?
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't actively read splatterpunk in a long time. I read a fair amount in like the '90s when it was really
Yeah, when it was,
when it
yeah,
was just in front of us all the time, and I loved it, but I didn't like always crave it the way I craved like the folksy horror of Stephen King and stuff like that. But I certainly appreciated it, and I certainly had a fondness for it. Um, but it's been a long time since I've really engaged with it as like a mature reader and as a writer as well. So I don't know that there were any specific um, influences that I can like nail down and name. There are a few that like are on the tip of my tongue that I want to name check, but I don't know if I'll get them correct.
okay,
So I'm not gonna venture, but they're in the library of influences. They're also like up there at the moment on my bookshelves, so I could go and find them. But to keep the conversation rolling, um, so I have that background as a reader of just as just like an obsessive consumer of horror fiction since the late '80s. There's a fair amount of splatterpunk that I've read. There are also I guess I would consider authors like Eric LaRocca, splatterpunk or extreme, but they're
extreme.
kind of like their own sort of niche, I would say. So like that doesn't quite feel like the right thing to pigeonhole them into. But like Eric is a dear friend of mine, and I've read a ton of his work. So there were like more contemporary authors like that I was like, oh, I want to play in that sandbox a little bit. Like
You're there.
I want it to be like something that's like gnarly the way writers like Eric toy around in. So it was also kind of influences like that were going into
You
it.
you've created a perfect read along. Rest Stop is a perfect read along with Eric's work for sure. I
Oh,
love
okay,
it.
I
Yeah.
take that as high praise.
Oh no, you guys are your feet are sandy because you're in the same sandbox now. So 100%. Okay, this Rest Stop is incredibly cinematic. Now I don't know if your novels are incredibly cinematic as well. I mean, Nestlings, don't even get me started. We'll talk at a later date about the cinematic nature of Nestlings. But this novella, I mean, it really bounced off the page.
Hmm.
I mean, and that's you. I mean, that's you showing the reader and describing for the reader, what's going on. But it's so, I mean, it's so sanguine. And I don't, again, no spoilers, but it is.
There's a lot
It,
of sanguination happening. So that's true.
this is a, oh boy, I may be canceling myself. This is a wet story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll just leave it there. We'll just leave it there. We'll leave that for the reader to discover themselves.
There are puddles.
Uh, but it really did leap off the page. It's so cinematic, and I couldn't help but think, different setting, but I couldn't help but think of The Hitcher. I
Yeah.
just this random encounter
Mm-hmm.
with violence,
Mm-hmm.
and then what spins off from that encounter, and the chaos that just starts
Yeah.
to exponentially grow from that. And I just, we're talking about Eric being your Rest Stop being a perfect read along with Eric's work. The Hitcher is a perfect watch along for Rest Stop, so much so that I watched it today. You
Oh
just
yeah.
you,
I
you
assume
put it.
the original, the Rutger
Oh
Hauer.
yes,
No,
look,
we don't speak of the remake.
we don't speak of the remake. We always know it's just as hard to make a bad movie as a good movie, but that's a real bad movie.
It's a real bad movie.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, we're talking about Rutger Hauer and those desert landscapes
Yep.
and just that nihilism.
Yep.
And again, we're not going to spoil anything for the reader, but I will just say that the encounter, the random encounter through no one's fault, through no fault of Abe, he just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, is such catnip, not only for myself and not only for you as the writer of this story, but I think for horror readers in general, though it's just what we adore.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
those wrong place at wrong time stories. This is going to now be one of the greats, and I don't say that lightly.
Thank you.
I don't say that lightly. It's just so friggin' good. You know, again, I have to watch my words because I don't want to spoil anything, but I do want to get into some of the deeper themes,
Totally.
because even though this is a thrill ride and it's adrenaline and it's kinetic and frantic and just visceral as hell, there is a very grounded through line theme of generational trauma
Mm.
that I think perfectly grounds the story as fantastic and as bonkers, and I mean that in the best way possible as it gets. It really grounds the story because we have Bobby, the grandmother.
Mm.
Again, no spoilers. You know, I don't think I'm getting spoiler territory, but Abe is going to visit his grandmother, who is terribly ill.
Mm.
And you know, the relationship is not great by any means, and you know, Bobby's view of Abe is like, okay, and it's a view of generations, you know, previous generations, that maybe they have had it, sorry, not previous, the generations ahead, that maybe they've had it a little too easy,
Yeah.
and they're in this bubble, and then what you do is literally write our protagonist into that bubble. And I just thought that, again, let me stop sucking all the oxygen out of the room. Tell me about that relationship with Abe and Bobby's experience in
Mm.
Poland, in World War II. How did that come about? Because I really think that that is the backbone of the story.
Yeah, it really is. And this would be a time when it would be really handy if I had said any of this out loud before, because I'm going to just ramble.
And
Because
they're going, yeah,
there's
that's what it's all about.
there's so much to this. Like, interestingly, like originally when I had first had an idea for this, which had started as a film treatment, oddly appropriately enough, because it just like seemed like it was just going to be such an easy movie to make. You know, two characters with some flashbacks and
I
a
think
single
so.
location. And then so I wrote it for my I wrote it for my film and TV managers, and I couldn't help myself, me being the ambitious asshole that I am. So there was just all this backstory and flashbacks, and like I wanted it to be about generational trauma, and I wanted it to be about all these things, and they were like, "This was supposed to be a really simple idea, and now you've just kind of made it too convoluted to produce." And so I was like, I'll turn it into a novella instead. But in that treatment, I had actually really been intrigued by the character of Abe being South Korean.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, that'd be interesting, because like that's just a country that I'm fascinated by, and history that I'm fascinated by, um, and particularly like the things that that the people living there dealt with at the hands of the Japanese during World War II and prior to World War II, and it a couple of things influenced my decision to then not ultimately go that route. One of which was purely practical, because I had really wanted a book to come out this year,
ah,
and because my next novel's not coming out until 2025, and for it to come out this year, I knew I was going to have to write it really quickly, and I'm not comfortable writing about somebody else's culture without like extensive research and beta reading and consultation and stuff like that. So I was like, I literally don't have the time to like write this in a way that I'm not like stepping on my own asshole and just making assumptions about somebody else's life that I shouldn't be making assumptions about. So I basically had no choice but to write it about my own upbringing, my own culture. And so the relationship between Abe and Bobby is very similar to the relationship between me and my Bobby, my Bobby Bell, my mom's mom, who's basically the only grandparent I grew up knowing. And my grandmother, similarly to the Bobby in this story, she was born in. It's funny. Up until like last year, I was just kind of assumed it was Poland, or had been taught it was Poland. But then I learned through some genealogical research of my aunt that technically it was kind of Ukraine. Like that border between Poland and Ukraine is very porous, especially during that period of
Yeah.
time. So she actually was like born and raised in like a little village that is like now part of Ukraine and was briefly part of Ukraine and was sometimes Poland. But for all intents and purposes, I'd always been told growing up that she was from Poland. So she grew up in Poland until she was like 7 or 8. And then her parents took her and her siblings to New York. So she was very classic story. She, as a child, was brought with her parents to Ellis Island. They set up a knish shop on the Lower East Side called Wallfish
Delicious.
Knish on Stanton Street. And then they moved to Queens. And they grew up in Little Neck and Deepdale, and like that's where my mom was born and raised. And so it was just a very like New York first generation Jewish story. And my grandmother, and this is probably unnecessary additional details, but then my mom was born and raised in Queens, eventually wound up in Arizona where I was raised. So we were always just kind of like the weird, odd family members out. The rest of my family mostly stayed in the tri-state area until my grandmother, like all elderly Jewish women are legally required to do, she moved to Florida.
She moved to Florida.
Yeah, exactly. So she lived in Florida for the rest of her life. But she was always this figure of great anxiety and confusion. She was a very, to me at least, I think my cousins, I have 3 first cousins who were very close with her, and I think they had different experiences with her.
Experiences with
But
her.
for me
Okay.
and my brother, our grandmother was at best a kind of chore to talk to. As I think a lot of like children growing up don't want to talk to the older relatives. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But she was mildly to frequently antagonistic and
Oh,
mean
okay.
and kind of cruel. And the stories that my mom told about her own childhood were, some of them were, I hate to tease them, but I don't feel like it's right for me to like divulge too many details. But some of them were like jaw dropping of like, holy shit, she did that? Like, that's really abusive or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And so she was just like a very hard woman to have a positive opinion about. And she was, I think, okay with that. She had that kind of attitude about her. And so growing up, like I really didn't want to have much to do with her. And this was my only grandparent.
Yeah.
But like it was always just like, oh, I don't want to deal with her. And it really wasn't until it was before she died, but far enough in her like health declination that couldn't really talk to her or anything like that. But I'd reached the age, like I think again most people do, where you just start to like have a hunger to
Yeah.
understand your ancestors as far back as you can get, especially if they're living. Like you just want to like know
You get
what they.
the itch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're like, what was it like for you? And like, I started learning more about history, and I started, having much more empathy for the sort of plights that people go through, and started to like really realize what it must have been like to have been, a little girl in Eastern Europe in an area that was like, full of pogroms. Like Jews were actively in danger, and
Mm.
she and her family fled for safety, and then fought desperately for their extended family to be able to come join them, and they failed in that attempt. Like the U.S. government wouldn't allow her cousins to emigrate, and they died in
Oh.
camps and things like
Oh.
that. So it was like, just realizing like, holy shit, like she watched so many horrific things happen. And also like she moved to New York in I think 1929. So like right when the fucking
Oh
stock
boy.
market crash happened. It
Oh
was like,
my
wow,
God.
what did you have to deal with? And, you know, again, like as with Rest Stop, this little anecdote that gets mentioned in Rest Stop, she would, if we were ever like in a cab together and it was clearly an immigrant driving the cab, she would start grilling them like, where are you from? I had it worse. And she would start like telling them actively, like, I had to sleep on the floor under the Knish shop in Stanton Street, and I didn't have a bedroom for many years, and you had it easy. And like the driver's just like, what the fuck is this woman trying to compete with me? So it was just like very unpleasant to be around. But like the older I got, the more I started to at least appreciate, like, she really did go through
what she went through.
horrific things. And it was literally just like, I think like 6 months ago, I learned that her father, you know, I never knew her parents, obviously, my great-grandparents, but I didn't know much about them either. And I learned that her father was a fucking POW in Siberia during World War I.
Oh
And
my
literally
God.
was released from this Siberian death camp. And my grandmother was conceived like right after he got home. So like even like biochemically, the trauma that went into this DNA, I just can't fucking fathom. So this story was also then like an attempt for me to dramatize the warts and all of that kind of experience as like a third generation American. And you know, the Nestlings similarly, I think, is also about like assimilation and you know, trying to raise a new generation in a place that is not the place that you were from. So I was, you know, wrestling with the legacy of assimilation and the legacy of now being like especially relative to how I was raised, a very secular Jew and not as like observant Jew as she would have wanted me to be, and like probably her murdered relatives would have wanted me to be, and the, you know, the guilt and the confusion and the weird feelings that come with those sort of decisions. So I wanted to dramatize all that, and then also have something, you know, again, no spoilers, but something that's kind of close to a, if not a transcendence, then at least a peaceable understanding, a kind of seeing of each other, of like, because you know, I one of the other things that we can get into or not is that I purposefully wanted this story to be set in 2016.
No,
which
please,
to me feels,
let's get into it. Are you kidding me? You know who you're talking to. Let's get into it. Because at the end, because I had the copy that you sent me, is it going to include that piece at the end where you're saying get out and vote? It is going to include that?
Oh yeah.
Chef's kiss. Let's talk about it. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yes, the fact that it's 2016 resonates throughout the entire novella.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that you said it, because we're at this precipice of falling into the abyss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so full disclosure, listeners, readers, you know, if you've listened to 8 words that have come out of my mouth, you know that I'm a progressive liberal and I wear it proudly. And if that is a problem, okay, that's a problem.
I'm logging off.
Yeah, exactly. Then, you know, okay, I don't know what to say. But yes, please, let's get into the 2016 of it all.
Well, like exactly as you just nailed. Like I similarly, not even similar, exact same for me. And I look at 2016 as kind of like a hinge moment, you know, on the timeline that we've all kind of lived through. And I wanted to then, as I just said, like having these two generations kind of looking back at each other, the contexts in which they find themselves also I wanted to be kind of mirrored. And I don't want to compare the moments in extremity. You know, I don't think we are at the moment living through like, you know, a pogrom, as it were. Like, we're not quite living through like pre-Holocaust levels of like stochastic terror, but we're not on our way
exactly
there.
we're frighteningly, we're brushing up against it like shark skin, where it's
Mhm.
leaving a mark,
Yeah.
and
And
that's not good.
no, it is very not good. And I don't think we can say that we're not like as perilously close to tipping into full on objective fascism as maybe ever before,
Hmm.
as long as fascism has been a thing
Hmm.
for 100 years or so. So, like, it feels like we are teetering into, as you said, like into some sort of abyss that is an echo of the great war against authoritarianism of the middle part of the 20th century. Um, and so there is a neat parallel there. Neat as in clean, not neat as in neat.
Yes. Yeah.
It's neat. There's a clear parallel there that, again, it's one of those things that, like, if I had had a workable relationship with this woman in my life, I would have loved to have asked her, like, does it feel like this? Does it feel the same? And similarly, certainly as like as a Jewish person too, like I remember the uptick of anti-Semitism right away in 2016, like fucking swastikas in Beastie Boy Park and things like
Yep.
that. Like,
Yeah.
and I've been to many B'nai Mitzvot. My nieces and friends' kids and stuff like that. And there have to be armed guards at the synagogue because of
Right.
this uptick in anti-Semitism. And so that all just feels like it was unleashed in
Yes.
2016. Obviously, it's not like it was gone. There's always like a little simmering level of that. But when things went the way they went,
It percolated to
then
the top. Yeah.
there was a total permission structure to
Hmm.
engage in this sort of like time tested hatred, and not just for Jews, obviously for you know many ethnic groups, and so I wanted this to then specifically be set at the precipice of that era that we're still kind of finding ourselves in. Um, I don't think this is a spoiler. You tell me if you think this is a spoiler. I don't think so. But it's referenced later on that that maybe the time period that we were living in up until that moment was an anomaly. It's something I think about a lot. That like the post World War II kind of Pax Americana, dubious as it uh, is relatively anomalous in human history. Like from the 20th century on, the creature comforts, the life expectancy,
Yeah.
especially post the horrors of World War II, and when it seemed like the world was starting to stabilize in a way that it had never quite done before. That's the context in which we were raised.
Yep.
And fuck, I was born in 1981. I remember the late 90s very well. That's when I was like kind of coming into full consciousness as a human being, and we were literally told that like history was over. That was the
Yeah.
phrase they would use. History was over. Once the fucking USSR collapsed, that was the end of history.
That's
Like,
it.
and
Yeah.
now we're just
That's
kind
it.
of coasting. No problems at all. Nothing geopolitical or domestic that needs solving at all. But there was that feeling of like, well, now that communism is kind of figured out and we're done. All the great
We
enemies
did
have
it.
been, yeah,
We did
we
it.
did it.
Yeah.
It's just Disney World for everybody.
And now trickle down economics are going to cure all the
Right.
ills.
Everyone's going to have money. Everyone's going
Yeah.
to, have all the cheap crap that they want. And it's just going to be beautiful. It's morning in America. And I think it's been for people of our generation, it's probably been particularly disorienting to kind of, again, like be raised in that sort of feeling of we're the good guys and everything has been solved, to then like I was a junior in high school when Columbine happened. I was in college when 9/11 happened. I moved to New York when the financial crisis happened, and then you know all the fucking horrific events that have just kind of accrued, the history that we have lived through as
Yeah.
young adults into middle-aged adults. It gave me a greater appreciation for the freakish feeling of stability that we experienced for a couple of decades. Because this really is more the natural order of things when you look at human history writ large.
Yes, very
Like,
much so.
yeah, and we still have it really good compared to human history. But human history is, again, it's just this fucking pointillism of atrocities. This,
Waiting to hear the boot on the door,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Huddled around the fire, listening for the boot on the door and
yeah.
wondering what you will do, you
What
know?
what is the great calamity that's going to threaten our
Yeah.
safety yet again? Like, I literally, my day job is right across the street from Trump Tower, and when he won, uh, immediately police barricades everywhere. Obviously, when he was still living there, it was even worse. Still to this day, there's still, a police presence there. Streets are barricaded off, and I would have to actively find comfort in that first like year being in that neighborhood, because you felt like either I'm going to get shot or someone's going to blow up the building or something is going to happen, because you're
Yeah,
like,
something's going to happen.
it felt the SWAT presence was just like immense. Like, haven't felt that at all since like the immediately post 9/11 years, when everyone had a fucking Uzi in the subway stations. This was that, but outside, and it just also there was just the stank of the building and that feeling of like, I don't know who to trust around here, and I would have
Almost
to.
like it's a cursed object.
It
Like
felt very much like a cursed
radiates.
object. Yeah, yeah. There was just this like thrumming aura of it. But even when you take the political preferences out of it, I had to find a very perverse sense of comfort in just remembering that this is probably more normal for our species than not.
That is fascinating.
It's heavy
and
shit.
Actually, it's heavy shit, but it's also a very you're very centered. That's I commend you to because you're working on that block and you're seeing that every day and you're looking at that every day. That's healthy that you came around to that thought, as depressing as it is. To take comfort in the fact that, yeah, you know what, it should be, Vikings, coming off a longboat, and my
Yep.
day's going to go from bad to worse.
Yep.
It's
I scratched myself on some wood, and now I have an infection, and I'm going to die at
now
31.
going to die.
Yeah.
Al, this tooth hurts. I'm dead.
That's it. I had a good 20-year run.
All right. Oh boy, this. Who is going to absolutely love the last 20 minutes that we were just chin-wagging about? Neil McRobert.
Oh yeah, Neil's gonna love it.
Neil McRobert is going to love that.
Little political wallflower, Neil McRobert.
Yeah.
Shrieking violet.
So let's circle back around. I'm going to land this plane, I swear. Let's circle back around, because we're talking about Trump Tower, and that it's basically like this. Now it's like this relic of evil that radiates evil. I feel the same way. And I could be completely wrong, and please let me know. I feel the same way about that fucking van, the Create Hate van. So I want to know two things. You have a real life experience seeing a Create Hate van. What was that?
It's nothing exciting. It's very anticlimactic. Just that my mom and I saw that van. We saw
that's a disturbing license plate,
van
though.
That license plate, windows tinted. It wasn't a Westfalia. Westfalia is kind of like running thing that I'm gonna. You'll see more of in my work.
Okay.
But yeah, the van itself was a thing, and I will never forget, because I think I forget how old I was. I feel like I was probably like preteen to early adolescence. But my mom put it together. She like read the license plate and put it together in a way that I didn't. I saw like, oh, it's a license plate. But I very clearly will always remember just like the look, and we were driving at the time, so we were like driving next to it, and just this like white pallid sheet that came over her face of just like, holy shit. Like, and I grew up in Arizona. This was in Arizona, where there's a lot of rootin' tootin' cowboy folk who have a lot of guns on them at all time.
And for someone to have to put it right out there, that's you may be dealing with a level of illness that you don't, that, you know what, let's go in the other direction.
Yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
I guess I should say for people who haven't read the book yet, there's a license plate that a certain vehicle has that is CR8H8, which we learn to realize is create hate. That becomes kind of important to the
Yes.
proceedings.
Okay, you already answered my second question, which was, I have it written down right here. Nat, I don't like the van. I feel like the van isn't a van. And okay, so we won't go any further because we don't want to spoil anything. But that's a great tease for the reader. But that fucking van, I don't trust it. I don't like it. Nope. But I am so excited to possibly see it in future works because that van is your fucking Cujo. It is. We're going to see. Well, okay, but I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there. But yeah, I got so excited when I finished the novella. And readers, watchers, listeners, Rest Stop is coming out October 15th. Oh, by the way, let's give a hearty shout out to Shockwave.
Right?
Holy guacamole. Oh, I'm sorry. Shortwave. I'll edit that out. Because I'm a complete asshole.
It took me a second too. I was like, "Is it? No, it's not Shockwave."
Let's give a huge shout out to Shortwave Publishing. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic job they've done with this novella. How about, I mean, it's right behind you, the cover. And, look, there may be a googly eye on the cover that might play into something. It might not. I don't know, Nat. I don't know.
Who's to say? You'd have to read the book to find out.
Read the fucking book. Come on, what do you want, everything?
Fucking lazy bums.
They do an incredible job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. It's all basically one guy. Shortwave is all
be kidding me.
Alan Lastufka. He's brilliant. He's a great writer. He's a fucking genius designer.
Alan, this is for you.
Yeah. So that's all him. And the interior layout, the font choice, all of it is just amazing.
10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah.
Incredible. Love that cover. Love the cover. But please go on the Shortwave Publishing website and take a look at all of the incredible books that are there for you to buy. They're waiting there for you, and the authors are phenomenal. So please have a go. All right, last question before I let you go. And this isn't a spoiler. I think it's a teaser for the reader. Who's your hair lip man?
I don't know if I have one per se.
Okay.
There's an early childhood memory, though, that is not about a real person, but it is always stuck in my head in the way those like inchoate little memories do.
Okay. Is it like an amalgam of a bunch of things, or is it just like a creation in your own mind?
In the book, that creature, entity, person in the book is just kind of made up. That's just kind of something that came through the writing of it. Like I don't have unless it's buried real deep, which is possible. I don't know. I'll bring it up with my therapist. We'll see what he says.
Try that
out. We'll patch him into this call.
I could use it, please.
Oh my God. That'd be fun. But the memory I have that anecdote is trying to evoke is I was like 5 or 6 years old. This also comes into play a little bit for When the Wolf Comes Home, when you get to read that as well, because it's all about childhood fears and imagination and stuff like that.
Love it.
But I had a very tiny bedroom, and my bed was on like one side of the room, and then kind of diagonal in the corner was this wicker basket I had full of stuffed animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I was getting ready for bed, which as a 6-year-old meant like picking out which stuffed animals would have bed duty.
Of course.
So
Wait, you're supposed to stop that at 6? Okay. Embarrassing.
6+, let's say. That plus can be as long as you want it to be. I feel like as adults, you have your bed crew. You know, you don't have to go through the election as much.
Yes.
But at that age, that was part of the ritual. It was like, figuring out which ones got the honor of bedtime. And so I'm, again, catty corner to my bed, which was also where the doorway was. And I'm picking through, trying to figure out which thing I want to have. And I turned and I looked at the doorway. And again, like, I remember this clear as fucking HD. There was a shadow on the floor that I thought was mine, because it was also like a little boy's shadow.
Oh, fuck me.
And I turned and I just saw it and I was like, oh, that's my shadow. And I did this, to try and move it, and it didn't move. It just like stayed there in the shape of a child. And I have no memory of what happened next. If I just like, then, speaking of Cujo, just like fucking like Tad just like ran into bed, or if some sort of possession happened. I don't know. Again, I'll bring it up in therapy. But yeah, I will never forget the full body chill that went through me of just like, that's not my shadow.
That is something. So fucking scary. Okay, I'm just going to, even though you didn't ask me, I want to throw it in there because I can't stop talking.
Do it.
So, same age. I was just about 5, 6. No, I was younger because I was still in like it's a crib, but they take one side down, so it's kind of like that. But I had a beloved blanket. It was a plaid blanket, and it had fringe. That like yarny fringe that's on it. And I remember this like it was yesterday and crystal clear. My parents were entertaining, had a party going on downstairs. So when you're a kid and you're kind of falling asleep, but you can hear the party going on, and it's very comforting.
Uh-huh.
And I remember looking down, and the fringe on the blanket was crawling toward me.
Ah!
And I don't know what happened, like a spider. And I don't know what happened next. Just like you, I don't know if I died and this is all simulation. Like I have no idea. But it is the defining moment of terror when I first realized terror in my young little life. And I guess it made some sort of impression because I'm certainly not chasing that thrill, but it left some sort of mark. But yeah, it's just weird, these young ages where you have these unexplained occurrences and they just remain that way forever. It's kind of cool, that we survived.
Yeah.
But all right, Nat.
I also want to. I just want to piggyback off of that too.
Oh, sure.
Because this was a heavy conversation. I wish I could remember the source.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, a total blast! Total blast. I love heavy conversations. But there was just to tie what you just said in a bow. I think it's a poem, or maybe it's just a social media post, but it's also one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. And I can only summarize it. I don't have it memorized verbatim. But it was the idea of, remember when you were a kid and your parents would carry you to bed and there was the sound of a party in the other room, and how comforting that was, like you just said. The thrust of the post was like, I hope that's what death is like. And that feeling of like, there's a party in another room and it's going on, but it's okay. You're in bed and you're safe and you're going to sleep.
I love it.
And there's just something about that image that I'm like, yeah, I do. I have a very visceral memory of that feeling of just like, something's going on over there, but it doesn't concern me. And I'm just here.
But I'm safe.
With my spider blanket and my shadow boy.
You've given me so many fucking nightmares.
It's all part of the job. I also want to quickly just tag.
Of course.
You mentioned The Hitcher. The Hitcher is huge. Also, Green Room, Splinter, and The Strangers. Those are like the 4 like most influential vibe movies too. Since since this is what we're also here to talk about. Since it's Cineful Cuts, I want to make sure that playlist gets mentioned. Splinter is so great.
You just stole the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, how about that deep cut of Splinter?
So good.
And we're launching a fantastic character actor, Shea Wiggum, in that movie.
That's right.
He is phenomenal.
So good.
Oh, damn it. I'm going to watch that tomorrow. Oh, sorry, job that I should be doing. Well, I have plenty of time to watch movies when I'm out of work.
It's also, I think, like a cool, like 80-minute movie, I think, if I remember correctly. So
I love an efficient movie.
Yeah.
Quick, clean, gets
In and
right
out.
to it. Bing, bang, boom.
Great monster. So gory, so painful.
Perfect watch-alongs. Oh my goodness, perfect watch-alongs. Okay, so this will be on Macabre Daily. Macabre Daily, we love you. And of course, it's going to be on Sinful Cuts. I'm going to post this. I'll have this on next week, and we will get the Nat Cassidy in everyone's ears and eyeballs, and maybe we'll lock him in a bathroom. I don't know. It just got weird.
I love a good bathroom.
No, you've ruined a good bathroom for me now.
As someone with a touch of social anxiety, the bathroom's my favorite place.
Just the fact that you seriously have put me on my heels about convenience stores, which is my happy place, because there's nothing that's good for you in there. It's all junk, and that is where I thrive.
Just be very vigilant when it's 3 a.m. and no one is around.
No, I'm going to pee my pants.
Yeah,
thank you.
exactly.
This is what you've done to me now.
I might have just saved your life.
You probably did.
Or prevented you from growing in the way that you need to grow.
Oh, well, now this is like a Lady or the Tiger. I don't know what's happening
Maybe
now.
you need this to happen. What's your generational trauma? Start the clock again.
We don't have enough time for that. Oh, don't forget, I grew up Irish Catholic. You want to talk about generational trauma? Please. You want to get into grandparents? I have my Bobby too, Well, this has been so fantastic. I can't thank you enough because I really enjoy talking to you. It's nothing but fun, and the work that you are doing is just phenomenal.
So thank you. Right back
keep at it. Well, thank you. Keep at it, and I promise you, we'll have you back on very soon. And if there's anything that you need for Macabre Daily or Sinful Cuts, you just say the word, and we'll do. Good night, Nat.
So appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.